evolved. So when this first opportunity came to me, Divya spoke to me that, sir, you have to come and speak about your success story and all that. So I said, I don't think I'm still successful, right? Because I'm still evolving, right? I'm not reached the, I'm still not reached a stage where Pras and MK are. I'm still evolving. And that is because first I started basically with contract management. That was what it was all about, because I had to enable the business, support the business. Then slowly I took over the role of management of business ethics, because Tatas were very big in that. Then litigation management came along, IP came along. Then the compliance framework has suddenly started taking a lot of prominence because of the development of laws across the world. And also the profiles of my company started becoming more global, right? So which basically was a change in the mindset from a local to a global thinking, right? And compliance has become actually very big now, because no longer it is a certification-based thing, and you, as GC, you are responsible to the board and the management in terms of giving them an assurance function. So not only from an execution function, you are now a responsible officer giving assurances to the board. So that's the transformation in the profile. And now lately, in the last 3 years, I also kind of got into the sustainability piece of it. That was basically giving back to the society. And I now head the sustainability of Tata Technologies as well. And the legislation of 2% has brought in more focus in terms of what the role, and this role kind of now starts giving me every now and then this question: what do I stand for as a GC? What is the purpose that I have in the company? Is it only business enablement, or it is more than that? And I think I'll be available for more questions as we progress with the session. I'll leave my session at that, just giving you an overview of how things develop, and I'll be happy to answer more questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. May I request Shivani to please make her presentation? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I want to start off by apologizing, because I think my presentation is going to have a bit of a philosophical bent to it. The reason for that is this is quite a landmark year for me. I'm turning 40 in a couple of months. I'm kind of midway through my working life, I'd say. Been in the profession for about 18 plus years. And at the beginning of this year, I took, after a lot of contemplation, and I have been in a contemplative mood this year, decided to make quite a big career change. So when Prasanna asked me, when we talked, and he said, you know, he'd like us to talk about our experiences in our careers and in the general counsel role, I started thinking about what I wanted to say, and I came up with something called the sevenfold path, with due apologies to any Buddhists in this room. Just to give you a bit of a background to my career so far, I was in private practice for almost 10 years. About 8 years ago, I was headhunted by G4S, which is the world's largest security company, to take on the role of the regional general counsel for the North Africa, Middle East, and Southern Asia region. About 3 years ago, I took a group legal counsel position in which I had oversight over the entire structure and corporate function of the group. So about 900 legal entities and spread over 120 countries, 800,000 employees. It's a listed company, so you know, the regulatory and compliance issues are very onerous as well. And in January this year, I took the decision to kind of take a sidestep in my career. You know, after 18 years of burning the candle at both ends, sat and thought about what I really wanted and realized that I need a bit of a breather. So I now am concentrating just on the really big, important, very sensitive structural issues and M&A issues, and left the day-to-day things of the structure function to a couple of mid-level lawyers that they brought in. So it's an interesting year for me this year, and which is why I'm in this contemplative mood. And I thought I'd just talk about some of the things that I've learned in this journey. My first point in my sevenfold path would be what I think a GC needs is integrity, reputation, and dignity, and to preserve them. I realize that I think the GC's role is really the conscience keeper of your business. And as other people have said here, the lawyers don't always like the business guys, and the business guys certainly don't like the lawyers. But there are times when you have to challenge the management. You have to compromise, of course, but you can't compromise on your integrity or your principles. And there are times you just need to hold up under pressure. The management is going to want to do things a certain way, but you're there to make sure that the integrity of your business and the reputation of your business is not compromised. The second thing I learned was that you need to recognize reality as well. Law is important, but there are so many other things you need to take into account when you're in a GC role. You've got to be very commercial. You've got to look at the tax aspects, flow of funds, reputational issues, and then law, I think, in the hierarchy comes, I think, after most of these for most businesses. So what I found is, for any given issue, there are about 10 different ways in which to solve it. And I think the GC's role really is to find the most optimum solution without it being illegal, even if it might be the most complicated. But you need to have an open mind and do that and just work with everyone else and keep your management happy. The third thing I've learned is to be open to risk. I mentioned how I had moved from practice in-house, and not the move that I was contemplating or even thinking about, it came out of the blue. It was a big risk at that time, but I took it, and I'm very glad that, excuse me, that I did. Laura has talked about the move and how different it is. I'm not going to go into that, but it has been a very, very rewarding move for me. The one thing I did find in the move, and it took me a couple of years to adjust, was in practice, lawyers tend to be very risk averse. But as an in-house counsel, you have to be just the opposite. All business involves risk, and you have to be willing to accept risk, recognize it, and learn to mitigate it. And that's one thing that I found, I think one of the starkest changes that has come in me that I've gone from being completely risk-averse to now completely risk-friendly. The fourth thing on my list is self-awareness and humility. You need to know your strengths and weaknesses. For example, I'm not a litigator. I've never stepped inside a courtroom. I've never argued. But that doesn't mean that I can take on a litigation matter and say, oh, I know it all. You need to take help, understand who's good at what, and don't be afraid to ask others for help. You need to have belief in yourself, but also humility, I think. And mistakes happen. All of us are human. Mistakes happen. The thing is, accept them and learn from them. Team, again, very important. A lot of people are afraid to train and to delegate, thinking, well, if I train someone up, they're going to take my job. I don't think that's true. I don't think that happens. And the other thing I've found is take the time to get to know people and don't just talk about work. I think the more strong your interpersonal relationships are, and not just with your own reports, but other people in the organization, the better you're going to do your job. The sixth is be flexible. You know, things don't always go according to plan. You need to learn to deal with it. Again, as someone mentioned here. And the last thing I'll say, because I am running out of time, I'm sorry I'm rushing through this so much, is happiness. You need to be happy. You need to find your work-life balance. You know, figure out what's important to you. And, you know, even if it means, as I've done, taking an occasional sidestep from your career for a couple of years, you need to do that. You need to be true to yourself and just find your bliss. Thank you.
Thank you, Shibani. It is indeed a challenge to have work-life balance. As somebody said, that work-life balance is all about working 24/7, and the rest is, the balance is for life. God knows how you're going to figure it out. Anyway, I have great pleasure in welcoming Thomas. Thomas has been a case in study of how a Indian GC has actually moved on to a overseas jurisdiction, looking after the legal and other affairs in different countries, APAC and Japan. So that just shows how the progression need not be limited only to your country, but you can actually aspire to become a global general counsel. And I would let Thomas share how he got there. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to be here, to be part of this August panel. As Anubhav mentioned, when I was a young lawyer in IDBI, that is how I started my career. Always looked upon to people like Mr. Prasanna and Mr. M.K. Sharma as our role models. Before I start this, I remember one of the articles that I read recently. It was a study by American Bar Association, which in fact spoke about the trend in the US market, which I think is a trend globally. The trend is that from law school hirings by law firms have been falling in the last few years, and there are a lot of articles being written about the future of legal profession and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, the legal department hiring has been going up across the world. And I don't know whether any study has been done in India, but I'm certain that if you do a study, you know, this profession has really come a long way in last 10 years. And you know, most of the companies are hiring more and more lawyers into their legal department. And this is a trend that I have seen in most of the market, be it developing markets or mature developed markets. And part of this trend also, you can see the way the profession is moving. You know, one of the things that I have learned when I move around, meeting business leaders of our company across the Asia Pacific and Japan region is, everyone wants more lawyers. No one has told me that they don't love lawyers, but no one has told me that, you know, don't put a lawyer into this situation or into my team. Everyone wants a lawyer to be present in most of the business decisions. That really shows an important aspect of this role. The role is here to stay. It also shows that the lawyers are extremely valued in the corporate field across the world and across cultures. You know, I had the opportunity in my current role for last 3 years to work with varying cultures like Japan, Korea, China, and all the other mature markets in Australia, New Zealand, as well as I'm part of the global GC staff in US. So I think the trend is same. There is, you know, irrespective of different business cultures, a common theme is evolving that in business decision making they need lawyers. The reason for that is every one of us know that compliance is becoming very important. Businesses are becoming global, and there are a lot of challenges coming up, and the lawyer's skill sets in risk assessment is becoming very important in the governance model. So that is here to stay. The same theme, I remember when I was taking a decision 20 years back to pursue an in-house career, I consulted one of my mentors on the litigation practice. So he advised against me joining in-house counsel profession. That time, it was not well known in Indian markets. I was fortunate in my journey to work with senior leaders Before I moved on to a company like HP, I worked with IDBI, ICICI, and then with Wipro. I was fortunate to work with the head of legals who really enhanced the profile of the department within the management. I think one big difference between Indian setup and a global setup is, in a global setup, the role is sort of carved out unless you give it up. The role is there to, that role and the position is sort of carved out for lawyers. While in India, it is not really carved out. You have to really establish yourself. And the department's profile will depend on how the head of the department is. Right? And I was fortunate to be in companies where head of the departments had that kind of a significant profile, which really enhanced the profile of the entire profile and standing of the entire legal department. And when I got an opportunity to be a manager and build teams, and that was the predominant theme in my mind, it is not a one-man game, it is a game of a large number of people. And as leader of the group, my credibility will determine the profile of the department within the organization. And that was one major learning my career, if I look back into my career. Another theme I want to really put in place here is lawyers would fall into the trap of in the comfort zone. You do the same kind of work for few years, you're an expert. Your client starts respecting you, and there is no magic there. You do the same thing for 5 times, 6th time you're an expert. Maybe someone else may take 2 more other similar situations to be an expert. So that's the difference. At the end of the day, you do it 10 times, you're an expert. So there is this trap of being in the comfort zone. Your clients like you, you are very comfortable where you are, and this happens in mature, big, large legal departments as well. I've seen that. RGC, the worldwide head of legal for HP, also talking about it. The legal departments, once they fall into this trap, the flip side of that is, you are really not innovating. You are really going into the same old path. There is a huge focus on innovation